Welcome to the Student Ministry Podcast. My name is Steve Cullum, and I'll be your host for the next little bit as we talk with another student ministry worker. Today, we're talking to Tim Wadsworth. Tim is the Director of Student Ministries at North Hills Church in Taylors, South Carolina. And I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation today. Tim has his own podcast that he's been doing for a little bit. He has several years in ministry at the same church in his hometown. And he also has an interesting story of how he kind of tried to follow this other calling or potential calling with music, and then God brought him back to student ministry, and he's just continued to follow his calling for a people that he knew and loved in the town that he grew up in, and now he's able to reach them and reach the next generation in that town. And I'm really excited, again, for you to hear this great conversation. But before we do that, let's jump into our sponsors who are amazing, and we're so grateful for their sponsorship of this podcast. First of all is WorkCamp NE. That's WorkCampNE, and their website is workcampne.com. Make sure you check them out, especially if you're looking for a mission trip opportunity for your students that is based around service projects and worship and coming together with other youth groups. It's an amazing opportunity. I've worked with them for many, many, many years, and I highly recommend them. Check out their website. And what they also do are private camps as well and private service projects. So if you can't make the summer weeks work, contact them about possibly coming into your own town and creating an opportunity for your students right there. Also, we want to thank our sponsor, combined sponsorship of the National Network of Youth Ministries, whose website is youthworkers.net, and Reach Youth New England, whose website is reachyouthne.com. Both of these organizations are all about connecting youth workers together. So if you have been doing all this on your own, it's time to change things. Make sure you check out both of these websites to connect with other youth workers in your area, because we are better together. It's one of the best things that I've ever done is to connect with other youth workers, because you can bounce ideas off of each other. You can share your struggles, you can share your joys, and we can do so much together as well. We're going to come together with a couple other churches in our area this summer and to do some events that possibly we couldn't have done on our own, or they wouldn't be as exciting if we did them on our own. But because we're coming together with a couple other youth groups together, it's just been so much more exciting to talk about the possibilities and getting our students to connect as well. So many benefits of connecting with other youth workers. Make sure you check out youthworkers.net or reachyouthne.com and find some other youth workers in your area. So thankful for WorkCamp NE, the National Network of Youth Ministries, and Reach Youth New England for sponsoring the Student Ministry Podcast. But with the sponsors out of the way, let's jump right into this conversation with Tim Wadsworth. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. All right, thanks so much for joining us today, Tim.
Yeah, man, so happy to be with you.
Cool. So we're just getting to know each other a little bit. I know the podcast audience out there some people may know you. You have your own podcast as well. So for the rest of the world who may not know who Tim is yet, tell us a little about yourself and kind of what led you into student ministry.
Yeah, so name is Tim Wadsworth. I am student pastor at North Hills Church in Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville's home for me, so it's been awesome to not only do ministry in the town that I grew up in, but I really love our city. So it's I feel so called, obviously, to our church, but I feel more so called to our people. But I do have a little podcast. I think I'm like 5 episodes in. Like I'm a newbie. It's the Find and Follow podcast. You can see more of that at timwadsworth.com. But so my story is I was born in Miami, Florida. And when I was 4 years old, our house got destroyed by Hurricane Andrew.
Wow.
My dad works for Publix, where shopping is a pleasure. And they transferred us to Little Simpsonville, South Carolina in Greenville County. And even at 4 or 5 years old, I remember thinking and truly believing that God was still good, even though our house got destroyed and everything was just kind of dicey. And so even at a young age, even though I didn't put my trust and faith in Jesus and in Jesus alone, I remember knowing that there was something greater and bigger than me, and that force or that spirit was good and loving. And so at a young age, my parents put me at a place called Southside Christian School, where thankfully there was good theology, there was good shepherding of our hearts. And man, just learning that, like the pillars of what Scripture teaches, that the only way to heaven is through Jesus, and learning that Jesus was the way, the truth, and the life, and that to follow Jesus, you have to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow him. And at a young age, I was taught that to pick up your cross means that's your symbol of death. Every day we pick up our symbol of death. And so I remember just as a elementary school kid that if I was going to follow Jesus, I wasn't going to ride the fence. I was either going to be all out and follow myself, or I was going to be all in and make Jesus Lord and commit my life to him. And so at a young age, man, I fell in love with two things, drums and Jesus. And so I was the kid that was like the 8th grader who was playing drums in big church.
Nice.
And like that was my Super Bowl. Like I made it, like when I was playing it, not youth group, I was playing in big church. And then to me, that was it, dude. I arrived. I could retire, and hang my number up in the rafters like I was done. So the older I got, man, my youth pastors kind of took me under their wing and kind of put me in their discipleship program, put me in their student leadership team. And there was a lot of heartache and tears along the way. I was really immature, and these were the kind of guys that called me out. Like these were the guys that were not okay with mediocrity, were not okay with when I would bend the truth or if I would influence in a negative way. And man, they held my feet to the fire. And I was in a weird mix because it was a private school and a church in one. So it was like youth pastors were keeping in touch with teachers, like they were talking with math teachers. Like, oh no, and they even did a great job with partnering with my parents. And they had my mom and dad on board. And so it was just kind of what was really annoying in 8th grade, 9th grade. I look back and God's grace was just so evident.
Yeah.
So around junior year of high school, I had an opportunity to sign with a record company called Red Tie Records up in Lynchburg, Virginia, which was birthed by Liberty University.
Okay.
And I was able to kind of make drums an actuality. And I was able to ride that wave of music for a long time. And I took several years off after high school to just play drums, whether it be studio. I was a studio musician, or I would fill in for other drummers and bands, or play for churches. So like a big church in Greenville is New Spring Church.
Okay.
And they actually pay their musicians to come, and like our church doesn't do that, but they were like, hey, we'll give you $150 to come play drums. And I'm like, yeah, that's a no brainer. So I kind of did that for as long as I could. And then after 3 years of when I graduated high school, I went to Liberty University, where I majored in biblical study and pastoral counseling.
Okay.
And that is where I truly not figured out, but I feel like I kind of reached this point in my life where I really understood really what it meant to follow Jesus. I mean, I feel like I was really good at playing church. I had a lot of head knowledge, but it really didn't reach my heart. And I was kind of at this crossing point in my life where it was like, Tim, you can either be a hearer of the word and never be a doer. But I kind of felt like light bulbs were going off in my head. Like, okay, you know what it means to pick up your cross and deny yourself, but you're really not doing that. You're not doing that with your finances. You're not doing that in your purity. You're not doing that in your relationships. You're not doing that with what you look at on the internet. But it seems to everyone else that you've got your stuff together. But if God were to really reveal what was going on behind closed doors, I was a fraud. I was a fraud. So I kind of had this moment where I was like, you know what, God? Like the poker chips are all in. I'm all in. And so everything that was instilled in me in youth group in middle school and high school. Like I wanted that. Like I didn't push it away or get frustrated by it. Now I embraced it and I wanted it. So like I gave, who is obviously now my wife, I gave my girlfriend like the passwords to my Facebook. Like I had that accountability. I had my best friend actually search my web browser to actually see what I was looking at. And it was one of those where like I knew that I knew Jesus knew what I was looking at. But there is something different when you know your best friend is going to see it. Like the blood of Jesus being shed should be enough. Like that accountability should be enough. But and I think that's why God says is iron sharpens iron. So one man sharpens another. And so I needed that. And I started seeing God just do really cool things in my life. And so graduated from Liberty, and I did an internship at a church in Clemson, South Carolina.
Okay.
I'm very familiar with the Clemson Tigers.
Yep.
Your national championship.
Yeah. I have a former student that went there. So
nice.
he likes to rub it in my face all the time. Yeah.
Grief. You know what? Obviously I went to Liberty, so we don't have a dog in the fight, but everyone is obsessed with the Tigers here. Like that shirt you're wearing right now that I'm looking at, like it's orange, and that color is everywhere.
Yeah.
So I did an internship down there and then got hired back in my home city of Greenville at North Hills. And I've been here now going on 8 years, which is crazy. And so my goal, and this is kind of wrap up your question, but, obviously when I really surrendered my life to follow Jesus, I thought, man, if I could be just like my youth pastor, that's a life worth living. Mm-hmm. If I could influence and impact other people like these guys have, then sign me up. And, I remember changing my major from music, or not music, from biblical studies with an emphasis in pastoral counseling. I changed it to student ministry. And it was just to be like, and I had 3 youth pastors. We had a really big youth group. If I could be like Brian Briley, Todd Milby, or Jason Malone, I would. But the people who had the biggest influence on me apart from them were my small group leaders. I really don't remember a lot of what my youth pastor said from stage, but I really remember my youth pastor and my small group leaders coming to my baseball game or just asking, like when I would walk through the doors, they would just say, Tim, like, dude, we're so happy you're here. Like, even though they probably weren't, that's what I remember.
Yeah.
Like, that's what stood out to me. And so much of our philosophy of ministry with Alive Student Ministry, which is our youth program here at North Hills, is so based around how I was raised and how I was brought up. And we definitely don't have it all right. For every one thing we get right, we probably get 5 things wrong. So anyways, that's kind of what I've done. And as a student pastor, and I met my wife at Liberty, Rachel. We have 2 boys, Judah and Levi.
Cool.
And you normally hear them before you see them. They're wild. Like, they are so out of control and crazy and so fun loving that when my wife bugs me for a third, I'm like, Rachel, I don't know. Like, that might be the worst decision we've ever made, to bring a third one into the world. Like, I don't know.
You'd be outnumbered. I don't know.
Bro, yeah. So my life right now, man, is ministry. And those 2 boys, they keep me really busy.
That's cool. Do you drum anymore?
You know what? Someone just asked me that question yesterday. I do. So like Easter yesterday, and I was able to play for those services because our program meets on Sunday night, and we didn't meet because it was Easter. Yep. So it was nice to be able to play. But you know what? Not as much as I used to, and I am getting kind of rusty. Like when I was on the kit a couple days ago, oh man, I was really convicted that I was getting kind of rusty. But I play as much as I can, and it's nice to be able to bless the church. Yeah, with that talent God has given me, and maybe this is just a freebie, kind of food for thought. But a few months ago, I was really convicted about how we're asking people in our church who work a full-time job to also serve. And to me and you as student pastors, that's just a normal thing we do. Yep. But I kind of asked myself that question. I said, Tim, you work full time. Where do you serve? Yeah. And I didn't, like I everything I do is with that student ministry. And so I was really convicted, and I went to our worship pastor. His name is Ryan Hodges. And I said, hey, dude, you need to put me on the schedule 2 Sundays a month, because I need to be serving apart from what I do full time. I need to be practicing what I preach.
Yep.
And it makes for a long Sunday because first service, we got to get there early. And so I'm getting at the church at 6:30 in the morning. And by the time youth is over on Sunday night, it's like 10 at night.
Yeah.
But we're asking our people to do that all the time.
Right.
So anyways, that's kind of the last thing that Jesus has really been teaching me is, practice what you preach.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I love that really when it comes down to it, it was your youth pastors and your small group leaders that made a huge impact on you. And over the 2 years plus that we've been doing this podcast, that story continues to come up over and over and over again. I mean, God continues to call people later in their lives and through different ways, but so many stories that I've heard have to do with the impact that youth pastors and or small group leaders had in someone's life that at least points them in the right direction. It may not be student ministry, but it's like, I want to pursue this type of a life because of their example and what they did in my life. I want to do that for other people. And so that's awesome to hear that's a part of your story, and then you can pass it on to others as well.
Well, that's massive. I mean, when we were at the Youth Pastor Summit in Orlando a couple weeks ago, I actually have it in my notes right here. I forget who the breakout session was by, but they said 80% of students who connect with 2 other adults that are not staff on a church stay involved in a local church after high school.
Yeah.
And that's massive. Like, and we adopt so much of that in our first time guest. Like when a first timer comes to our youth group.
Yep.
It's like if I go and I show them around and I'm kind to them, well, they know I have to do that. If I don't do that, I'm probably going to lose my job, right? Like, that's just what I do. It's like when my wife compliments me, I'm like, well, you're my wife. You have to say that. But if someone else compliments me that's not my wife or my youth pastor, it's like it really has a massive impact.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do is get 2 or more adults who are non-staff, have no strings attached in that ministry, to really impact these kids, because then we're seeing, this, every student wants to be known. They want to feel like they belong. They want to feel like that's their niche, that's their family. And if we can do that outside of staff or outside of certain key people, then I think you're on to something. But it does go to show that what you said is so true, that it's a reoccurring story that you hear from so many.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about your ministry takes place on Sunday evenings a little bit. Feel free to expand on that a little bit more. What's your week to week schedule look like? What's a typical ministry? What's ministry look like for you there at your church?
Yeah. Okay. So I get this question a lot from people, like, what do you do?
Right.
What do you do?
Does it often come from students? That's where I get the question from.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
You just hang out at the church all the time?
Yeah. No, there are a lot of people who just think that, like, we kind of chill all week and then we hit the ground running for Sunday. So a big part of my job description is to oversee our leadership team, and we have 90 leaders. Okay. So, and that covers middle school and high school. So a big part of what I do is making sure they're set up for success with whatever they're doing throughout the week or whatever their roles are on Sunday. And so even though our title is student pastor, I deal more with my adult leaders and my parents more than anything.
Yeah.
And so a big part of what I do is I've got those 90 people in mind. And that could look different every week. So like we just had a leader, she serves our 8th grade girls, and her mom was in a car wreck 2 days ago. And, I kind of dedicated that day to take them lunch. I think I even took out the trash for them, something small. Like that's what Gabby will remember.
Yeah.
The reason why Gabby will stick with that student ministry, I hope. And if Gabby stick around with us, like, I hope that's what she remembers, like someone, it's much more like when my phone calls her, I don't want her to think the only time I call her is when I need something. Like I want her to be able to pick up the phone and hear, hey, I'm going to bring you guys lunch. I'm so sorry to hear about your mom. Like, I'm here to serve you. I'm here to shepherd you well. And it's not you serving me and shepherding us.
Yeah.
So it can look like that. Sometimes, like we'll have kids graduate from our program and they want to come back and serve. Well, that's awesome. But that also is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. You're getting that 19-year-old freshman in college, but guess what? You're getting a 19-year-old freshman in college.
Right.
So a lot of what I do is continuing to pour into them, because I'm telling you, with proper care and with proper pointing them in the right direction, they'll be juggernauts on your student leadership team. And a lot of it also is possible counseling, and that could be mom and dad, that could be a leader, and then that could be middle or high school students. And interestingly, statistics show that the end of March, early April, you will see a spike in counseling. and I think it has to do with the weather. Now, I don't know, you're Colorado, I'm South Carolina, but right now the weather is beyond perfect. Like, it's not hot, it's not cold, it's like high 60s, low 70s, no humidity. But there's something about coming out of winter, and then there's newness of the season.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people still possibly feel dead or stuck in their sin or whatever the case may be. So you see counseling just kind of go through the roof right now. So anyways, what do I do? Those leaders, 90 leaders, mom and dad, that partnership is huge. So let's say we have a dad that comes to me and says, look, would you mind discipling or counseling my kid? We agree with that in that partnership, but what I want to do is disciple him. What I want to do is come alongside him and say, look, this is really your job. And what we're going to do is just meet for the next month. And how can I coach you? How can I, come alongside you, encourage you to love and disciple your kid? Now, sometimes we'll have some mom and dads that are doing everything right.
Yeah.
And then the way we partner with them is going to look very, very different. And so I do a lot of that. And then obviously, like, Mondays I think I was joking with you. I call it the holy hangover. Mm-hmm. So like Monday is a lot of recap of Sunday. Okay. Have we followed up with first time guests? I try and watch my sermon, that we stream live.
Okay.
I think as a communicator of God's word, it's so important to go back and watch yourself, just like an athlete would.
Yep.
Athletes go back and watch tape. We need to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think it was a couple sermons ago, I was doing something weird. Like, I forget what I was doing, but I realized I was so distracted, and I was like, dude, I gotta sharpen that up. Yeah. Like, I look like an amateur, when an 8th grader makes a comment and I allow him to take my attention off of teaching and onto him. And so I made that note, like I got to get stronger there. I remember, I said a word wrong. So in my sermon, I was using the word wheelbarrow, but it's wheelbarrow, yeah. But I kept saying wheelbarrow. And, and I was kind of embarrassed by that.
Yeah.
I was like, I know I'm from the South, and I know there's rednecks everywhere, but it's wheelbarrow, not wheelbarrow. I kept saying wheelbarrow.
Wheelbarrow.
Yeah. And I didn't catch that when I was actually doing it, but when I, watched the footage, and I was like, oh, good grief, Tim, like, you moron. So I do that on Mondays. A lot of it is looking to the week and gearing up for that. So like tomorrow's staff meeting, I'm leading that. Okay. So Monday is going to be getting ready for whatever God wants to say through me, or somewhere in God's word to challenge them, or this, that, and the other. And then like if I have meetings throughout the week, I make sure that I'm prepared for those. What else do I do? Oh, we use something called Planning Center online.
Yep.
And so we actually do obviously our musicians, because that's what it was made for. Yep. But we do all of our teams on Planning Center.
Cool.
Crowd control, dollar dinner, middle school, high school life group leader. We even have life group coaches, and okay. bore you with what that is later. But what I do is I look and see if anyone was unconfirmed. So what I do is I send the weekly email out.
Yep.
And they hit accept or decline. Mm-hmm. And in our youth program, a leader can hit decline and tell me anything they want. Like they literally could decline and say, I'm tired, you smell weird, and I don't want to come. And we're good with that because we never want to put our leaders in a position where they feel like they have to tell a white lie. Like I'm sick. And we're like, we know you're not sick, right, but you're saying that to get a night off. So I go back through, and if any are unconfirmed, I actually make a phone call.
Okay.
And I just say, hey, man, what you do is so important. You've got to communicate to us. You've got to keep us in the loop. Just say yes or no. That takes 5 seconds. Yeah. But the reason why I make the phone call is because I want them to know that I know if you're not there. And what you do matters. So I do a lot of follow-up from Sunday. And then, and I'll finish the question with this, we deal with a lot of money. When you're done with snack shop, we also do dinner. We call it dollar dinner. Compassion. We do an offering for compassion. People want to buy T-shirts or pop sockets or whatever. It's really interesting to see how much tangible cash will come through a student ministry. And to have the accountability with that. Yeah. To submit it the right way, to keep up with budgets. And that's what me and you, we have a relationship with, Doug Fields and Josh Griffin. We know them in the DYM community. And, that's where I love that they push back on the status quo of a student pastor being stupid with their budget or being an idiot with their calendar. Like, I feel like they call us to more than that. Yep. Like, that's unacceptable to suck with your budget. Like, that's God's money. That is tithe money that you're sucking with, and you need to step it up. Yeah. So I've kind of adopted that, to come in on Monday, submit receipts that need to be submitted. Don't lose your receipts. I'm blessed to have a full-time admin. So, Hope actually takes Monday off. She'll come in on Tuesday. I also make sure when Hope and I meet at 9 a.m. that I know what we're meeting about. And Hope isn't just sitting in my office and I'm kind of gathering all my stuff to see where we need to go. So anyways, Monday's kind of a recap of Sunday. Tuesday is like meeting day to the max. So 9 a.m. is my meeting with Hope. 10 a.m. I meet with my boss. His name is Alan Bunn. He's the pastor over our department. And that's me and him. Excuse me. That's me and him getting on the same page. Okay. 11 a.m. is staff meeting. And then I normally have a lunch meeting. And then by the time I get back, I want to meet with my student ministry team. So we have a worship guy. I have a middle school guy. I've got some life group coaches that meet with us as well. Hope will be in that meeting, and that's us meeting on Tuesday because guess what? Sunday's coming. Yeah. And we got to get all our ducks in a row. And it's, I think the downfall of ministries, we can get into a rhythm, to a fault. So anyways, Tuesday is like a meeting day. Wednesday morning is always sermon prep. So that's when I get alone. I get out of the office from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. I've got 4 to 5 hours to what am I preaching? What am I teaching? And then I send my planning center email out to the leaders that have the teaching outline, life group questions, and anything else they need to know. Okay. So Wednesday is that sermon prep. And then Wednesday afternoon and a lot of Thursday is I'm up in our student facilities, whether working on a stage design, getting all the snacks back in there. Like it's just getting everything ready for Sunday. Mondays I also podcast, by the way, which today's Monday and we're podcasting. Yeah. But sometimes if I'm lazy and I don't get it done, Thursday is also a day to do podcasts. And I would like to say that I'm always consistent in that. But I was just telling this to someone the other day. Like the hardest thing about ministry is the knock on the door. Yep. Like you can be working and being so productive and then you hear, yep. And that one pastor on staff that you barely know comes in and he wants to talk about something so random. And then 2 hours later, I get Pastor Jim or Frank or Harold, whatever his name is, out of my office. And I'm like out of a rhythm. Yep. And I don't want to be that pastor who like locks himself in his office to be productive. But I'm trying to find this balance of having an open door, but not an open door policy to the detriment of our student ministry. Right. So I'm kind of immature there and I need to grow. And with that. But if anyone has any tips on that, golly, I'll listen to that podcast.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out myself, because not only do we have, and I'm probably the distraction half the time, but not only do
I probably am too.
but we have like open cubicles and everything like that. We have a separate student ministry office, but our team is in there, and so we have people that can stop by, but I also have people that I'm staring at across the room. It's really easy to distract each other that way too. So sometimes I'm like, we're in the process of like remodeling our student area, and like I think it's going to be smart of me to just remove myself and go down there sometimes, just to like, you know what, Steve's down there in his area. He's doing his thing. Like whenever I'm down there, don't bother me.
Yeah, the greatest thing that happened to me. I don't know if you're familiar with Strength Finders 2.0.
Yep.
Yeah, by Gallup. But we got our top 5 strengths, but I spent the extra like $80 to unlock all 32. And my 32nd strength, like bottom of the barrel, was focus. And I actually took that to my boss and said, look, I need to be able to do sermon prep off campus. And we don't have strict hours or you have to be in your office. But like if they just saw me at Starbucks hanging out and didn't know what I was doing, or like they'd probably wonder.
Yep.
And it drove my boss crazy. But once he saw focus was my last strength, he's like all for me going off campus to get stuff done. And,
do whatever you need to do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So if I shared a cubicle, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
Yeah. Cool. So what's your ministry look like? Do you oversee middle school and high school, and you have them together? How's that? Because it sounds like you're at a fairly large church, and so like how does that all work out on a regular basis for your programming?
Yep. So we meet on Sunday nights, and we have a separate high school and middle school auditorium. So middle school and high school actually meet at the same time. So our doors open at 6. Everyone can check in 7th through 12th grade. So middle school is 7th and 8th.
Okay.
High school is 9th through 12th. We actually just created this new program just for 5th and 6th. Cool. It's the buffer between kid stuff and Alive student ministry. And we feel like we need those 2 years with them in 5th and 6th grade to help with that weird transition. Yeah. So 7th and 8th grade and 9th through 12th grade we've got a 9 square in our facilities. We have ping pong and air hockey, and we have a huge, play area, and we even just got a Gaga pit inside, an indoor Gaga pit. Nice. Which I'll bore you with that later about how we break so much stuff in that room. But so we come together at 6:15 and we'll eat dinner. We call it dollar dinner just for $1 you can eat. If we have a first time guest, that's our really easy way of just letting them eat for free. Just to let them know we're happy they're with us. And they didn't know to bring money. Yeah. So it's awkward to say, hey, we're eating. Oh, you don't have money. Oh, that's weird. So, it's kind of a twofer. First time guests eat for free, but then we meet after third service. Okay. So third service is from 5 p.m. to 6:30. Mm-hmm. Our doors open at 6, but we don't get a massive flood of kids till after third service. And we just have food on rotation of pizza, double cheeseburgers, or tacos. So literally Taco Bell, McDonald's, or Pebble Creek Pizza. So if someone is looking to eat healthy, our youth program is not it. So anyways, we do dollar dinner together, and then we actually meet all together for welcome and announcements and worship. Okay. And then we split for the teaching and life groups. So 7th and 8th grade go to their room. 9th through 12th will stay in the high school auditorium. I teach in high school, and I have 2 middle school guys, Connor and Josh. Josh does more of the programming. He's kind of more of the face of our middle school program, and then Connor does our teaching. Okay. And Connor's one of those guys that I meet with a lot. We're making sure he's good to go with whatever the content of God's word is that we're teaching. And then Josh, Josh fell in love with the impossible shot idea from DYM 100 last year. And so he, those were just fun things he does, and he'll do the games. And then he also does a really good job of connecting with our leaders as well, making sure life groups are getting set up for success. But the bulk of what we do with Alive Student Ministry is we say we exist to help students find and follow Jesus. So, that word find comes from the book of Matthew, where it says, knock and the door will be open, seek and you will find. We're trying to teach these kids, don't live in feast and famine.
Yep.
Don't come on Sundays and feast and then try and live off of that Monday through Saturday. We're trying to teach them how to seek, how to find, Now, we don't believe that we find God or that there's something that we have to unlock to get to the Spirit. Like, we know that it's God who pursues us in his loving kindness.
Yep.
But what we're trying to do is teaching them how to knock. Knock.
Yep.
How do we sit in the presence of God and hear from the Spirit? Like, what do we need to do to make it to where if Alive were to not exist tomorrow, it would at least be okay?
Yeah.
Like, I know that's a weird thing to say. Like, if Alive student ministry stopped existing tomorrow, I do hope there would be a void. Mm-hmm. Like, I do hope people would say, oh my goodness, like, man, like our community is hurting because of it, or our kids now don't have shepherds. But however, if we did stop existing, we at least taught them how to teach themselves,
right?
Or to eat for themselves. And then that second word, follow, that's when God said, the being fishers of men, to drop your nets, follow me. And so now it's okay. We know how to sit in the presence of God, but what does it mean to pick up your cross, deny yourself, and follow God? And the main way we do it, Steve, is through life groups.
Cool.
So what I'm up against is we've got 2 services in the morning, 1 in the evening, and I've got kids coming right to me. So I'm, a pastor staff, and I don't hear 2 sermons in one day.
Right.
So why are we going to ask our kids really to do that as well? And so what we're trying to do is a 3-part system called Know, Show, Grow. Know, Show, Grow. This is actually something I got from DYM. I think it was called U60.
Okay.
It was like it was like 60-second videos, and it was like you could give this video to parents, or they had separate ones for leaders, and it's a 60-second challenge to leaders or to parents, and it's awesome. And there was one season where it was just called Know, Show, Grow, and obviously it's really simple. It's get to know your kids. Do you know them? Do you know their last name? Like, we know kids' first names, but we probably don't know their last name.
Right.
And so I go to life group leaders all the time, or our student ministry leaders, even myself. And I ask the question, do we know them? Do you know if their parents are divorced? Do you know if they live under a bridge, or do they live in a mansion? Do you know what they like, what they don't like? There are some kids who love to be called out, but there's some kids, if you call them out, they're never coming back.
Right.
We've got to get to know them. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be batting 1,000 at this, but a hack that we did in our check-in system is if someone's a first-time guest, their name gets underlined. Okay. And if they're not a first-time guest, their name's not underlined. So I remember looking at a kid when I was first in student ministry and, saying, hey, like, is this your first time with us? And that little girl looked right back at me and she goes, I've been here for 9 months.
Oh.
And I was like, I knew that.
Yeah.
So that's when I thought, man, we've got to have a system in place, and it's not bulletproof. But now if I see a name's underlined, I know how to talk to them. If it's not, then I can use language like, hey, dude, good to see you again, or happy you're here, whatever. So what we try and do, and this is what I say to our leaders, if you want to know, are you hitting the bullseye as a leader? Are you doing what we expect? Just get to know them. Just get to know them. Take them out for coffee.
Yeah.
Go to their house. If you really want to get to know a kid, hang out with mom and dad.
Yep.
Apples don't fall far from trees. And I'll tell you, the more I hang out with parents, the more I'm like, it makes sense.
Yep.
Why little Bobby is the way Bobby is. The second part is show. So now we encourage them. What can you do to show them you love them? So my wife knows I love her. She knows. But I can't look at her and say, honey, I told you in 2009 at the altar that I love you. And that should be enough. I love you. No, I have to show my wife every day that I love her. And the more I get to know her, the easier it is for me to show her.
Right.
Because now, obviously, I know her. So, we're always pushing our leaders. What can you do to show them? Prove it. you can say I love you, but now let's prove it.
Right.
Whether that's a text message, like, hey, dude, I know you had a math test today. Hope you crush it. That'll go a really long way with kids.
Yeah.
Show up at their baseball game. Show up at the spelling bee competition. And we have a ton of homeschoolers, so I want to insert like a homeschooling joke. Like, show up at their trivia party or their bifocal party. I don't know. Like, show up at some, so it's going to look different for every leader. You're going to have the vet leader who's 60, owns his own business, and has 7 kids of his own. The way he's going to show love is very different. But I've got some leaders who are 22, single, no kids. Dude, your window is wide open for how you show love. And that's not to say if you're single with no kids that you're not, like, you're at home picking your nose. That's not what I'm saying. But like, when I shepherd a lot of females in our church who are longing for a husband, I empathize with them, but I also try and encourage them that you're still in a season where you're not tied down to a spouse, and God can use you in a more unique way than someone else with spouses and kids.
Yep.
You know, like, my ministry looked really different before kids, and my ministry has had to shift now that I have kids. So anyways, that's show. And we believe if you do know and show, helping a kid grow, piece of cake. You say jump, they'll say how high.
Yep.
You call them out on their sin, they'll listen because you've earned it, and they love you.
Yep.
And you know, we think if we have that 3-step process, and that's what we're all about on Sunday nights, and that know, show, grow looks really different. It's not going to be your stereotypical welcome announcements, worship, teaching, life groups. I mean, that needs to look different in the execution of helping these kids find and follow Jesus. A big part of what we do, the last Sunday of every month, we have something called Seniors in the Middle. It's where we pluck our seniors from the high school room and we put them in the middle school room, and they share their testimony. We want those middle schoolers to hear death to life stories. I think that's really important. Like, I remember being in 7th grade and listening to stories of salvation, and just really that made me think.
Yeah.
You know, like, I would hear them say things that were true about their lives, and I would say that's not true about my life. So what do I need to do about that? And so we're also thinking, how do we get these upperclassmen to no longer be consumers?
Yeah. How
do we get them to be an active part of a live student ministry? And so we're always kind of rethinking what that looks like for us.
Yeah, that's cool. And clearly those middle schoolers are going to look up to those high schoolers so much. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's huge. That's really cool. Yeah. And I think it's that last piece is probably interesting too, because it's something that I've always thought about. If we were to ever go to a simultaneous ministry, how do I get those high schoolers involved in the middle school ministry? Because I think it's valuable. Something like that's a great idea that you can, be able to, they could still have their own ministry for 3 months or 3 weeks of the month, but that last one they're pouring into the next generation behind them. So that's really cool.
And we're also trying, and we haven't figured this one out yet, but we're even thinking, do we figure out how to get guys and girls together in small groups? So, I mean, if in high school you always have your guys and girls separated, then they go to college and they're in a life group with other, a female or with a male, like that could be a whiplash.
Yeah.
And so we're even thinking, okay, let's treat them like adults. Like, now don't get me wrong. If the teaching was on like Song of Solomon, chapter 6, all right, let's break them up. Let's have appropriateness here. But you know what, man? I think we need to do a better job with having a guy and girl together, and for guys in the room to learn how to speak in front of ladies.
Yeah.
And for ladies to learn how to respect the men in the room. And that's not a stereotypical thing. Like, I hope listeners don't misconstrue that. Like, what we're trying to do is set them up for adulthood. What we're trying to do is to make them active participants in what Scripture calls them into. And I feel like that's something we're not knocking out of the park. Yeah. It's just really easy to separate them.
Yep, it is.
It's really simple.
Yeah. We went to a camp, our high school winter camp, and I decided to go ahead and mix the groups that night. And we had some pushback from some of the students because they're like, oh, the guys are just blah. But the purpose behind it was like, they need to see you Like, and you need to see them and you need to interact with them. Like, we can't do that on a regular basis, but I felt like at this camp, maybe we can actually experiment with that a little bit. And, and it was challenging for some of them, but I hope it was a good experience in the end. Because like you said, that's what their adult life is going to be like. They're going to be in mixed groups most of the time.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I think the reason why it's a challenge is because females are so much more mature than males.
Yeah.
Like I'm serious. Like it is sad. Like I've got two boys, like, Judah and Levi, and my brother has daughters. And even at a young age, it's like Mia is over there, like solving the cure for cancer. And then Judah's over there, like peeing in the bushes, peeing his nose. It's like, man, even at a young age, you see girls just take off way before guys. And I think you see a lot of that in middle school and high school. Like if you look at our check-in numbers, easily 60% are girls.
Yep.
And the other 40% will be guys. And maybe I should figure that out and write a book and make like a couple bucks off of it. But
there you go.
It's crazy, man, that you see a lot of females stepping up and leading more than the men in our church.
Yeah.
Which is sad. It's really sad.
Yeah. All right. So last question for you. What are some tips? You shared a lot of wisdom already, but maybe couple things that come to your mind that maybe if you're able to go back in time 5-10 years ago and you're like, man, Tim, if you knew these things before, this would really set you up, for a better ministry. What are a couple of those tips that you could share with others?
So I'll share two things. One is words have the power of life and death. And I'm 32 years old and I'm still struggling with my mouth. And I'm talking gossip to other staff members. If you don't like something, you go into another guy's office and close the door, and you got to watch your mouth. I'm an exaggerator. Like that's something that I struggle with, exaggerating the truth or, giving information to one person that he wants to hear and then maybe giving it different to this person over here. I think that has caused me a lot of heartache, and I think it's caused me a lot of crap that I've had to deal with that I should have never dealt with. Loose lips sink ships. So got to keep a tight rein on my tongue. And I have just felt now the freedom of that. Like you don't need to be an open book. You don't need to share everything with everyone, and it's okay to keep some things to yourself.
Yeah.
You don't always need to tell people what you're thinking. Or I just felt like early in ministry, my tongue got me in a lot of trouble. Whether I was teaching a sermon and I would say, and I probably have already said it on this podcast, but like that sucks. Like maybe I could use different words, and maybe I just say, dude, that was just that really stunk, or that was so unfortunate. Like I don't want to be a stumbling block for anyone.
Yeah.
And I know, like, it's semantics at the end of the day, but, God's word says that if eating meat causes your brother to stumble, don't eat meat.
Yep.
Like that is what it means to pick up your cross, die to yourself. And so where does Tim need to die to himself? With his mouth, with my words. And so I would say that's number one. If someone's listening to this, like, ask yourself that question: how am I with my tongue? Do my words speak life, or do they speak death? When your kids leave your ministry for the night, do they leave refreshed and energized and full of life? Or do they feel like you just made fun of them, or you had to one-up them in a joke, or you said something that was just perceived the wrong way? So that's number one. That's kind of more a heart issue.
Yeah, that's huge.
But then I would say practically, some tips that I would give is delegate. Leadership without delegation is dictatorship. So we need to be thinking, how do we equip the saints to do the job of the church? It doesn't need to fall on me. So I've got 90 leaders. We've got close to 350 kids. 350 times 2 with mom and dad. That's close to 800 and something parents. Man, you want to get burnt out in ministry and not have longevity? Learn how to not delegate. Now, when you delegate, don't just delegate because you're lazy or you just don't want to do it. Delegate stuff to people, then coach them, then set them up for success. And I felt like I was a one-man band early in student ministry. Like I felt worship, I can help the worship team. Leadership team, I got it. Preaching, teaching, I got it. Counseling, me. Going, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Because I'm deep down a control freak. So I have just seen that the most successful youth pastors are brilliant at delegation. And they set their people up for success when they give them a task. And a lot of that is no show grow with your leadership team as well. So now, and I think that this is where you can go from good to great. Take your leadership team and your students from being renters to owners. Make them an owner. When you get a rental car, come on, we treat that thing like poop. Like we're taking corners hard, we're gunning it, we're slamming on the brakes, we're cranking music. I mean, we're driving it like we stole it. So what we got to do, and it's the same with a rental house. People don't treat a rental house like they would if it was their own house. It's just the truth. So what we got to do, the reason why you see so many kids go off to college and just fall off the map, they were a renter. They rented. They weren't an owner. So we're taking leaders through like ownership. You have ownership of your kids. This is yours. If you're over this section of our ministry, take ownership. Now, when you have owners, I have to be a good listener. Like I can say they're owners all day, but when they bring an idea to me and I shoot it down, they're not going to feel like an owner.
Right.
So a lot of that is, trust them. You put them on your leadership team. If they have an idea, if that's what they say the Spirit is doing in their heart, go ahead. Let them do it. Now, you inspect what you expect. But you know what? We're trying to take our leaders and to be owners. We're doing the same with our kids. Let them own that student ministry. Let them have nights where they're behind the mic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing I'm trying to work on is, am I the only one preaching and teaching in this youth group? And if so, that's a pretty crummy diet. Like ice cream's great, but if I had ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's just not good.
Right.
And so I'm trying to bring in other student pastors. I'm trying to bring in other influencers in our community, other pastors on our staff. And I'll end it with this. Don't be an island. Don't be a church within the church. Figure out ways to partner with all the other spectrums of your church. So if you want to do a mission trip, go to your missions department and talk to them, partner with them. If you have a counseling department, partner with them and how you counsel your kids. That's one thing I feel like I'm trying to utilize better is how can I partner with North Hills Church and not just it be a live student ministry world.
Right. Yep. That's huge. And I think that's so important. I think across the board, I think because I don't know, a lot of people when I was at smaller churches, I heard people at larger churches going, you need to delegate and all this stuff. And I'm like, I have hardly anybody. Well, you do have two or three, maybe, or maybe it's one or two, and we can still practice those things even in a smaller scale as well, and partner with a larger church. Maybe it's just you and the preacher. Well, bring the preacher in every once in a while, or vice versa, or something like that. And there are different ways to partner even at different scales.
Yeah, and I would even say if you're a youth group, let's say you've got 15 kids and you have 2 leaders. Okay, so delegate a spiritual obligation.
Yeah.
So delegate like, hey, for you 2 leaders, what I want you guys to do is your goal for this year, find someone that would be a great fit for our team. So now you're delegating that recruiting isn't just on me.
Right.
Recruiting is on us. Look at those 15 kids and say, look, I'm going to delegate the Great Commission to you. I want you 15 to find that one kid on your sports team or that one kid at school, and you're going to invite them. And now what you're doing is you're not only delegating just a tangible task, you're delegating spiritual tasks as well.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really huge. So thanks so much for joining us today, Tim. I'm sure that people are going to want to know a little more about you and ask more questions, pick your brain a little bit, listen to your podcast. So where can they contact you? What's the best ways to find you and all your stuff? Yeah,
so two websites. One would be timwadsworth.com. I try and blog regularly on there, and I keep my podcasts on there as well. And so if anyone's interested in or lives in the upstate of South Carolina, you can check me out there. And then secondly would be alivestudentministry.com. We keep a lot of our sermons on there. We keep it pretty up to date and pretty, I guess, relevant. If someone were to visit it, they would feel like it benefited their time to go there. And so I would say those are two ways that you can keep in touch with me as well. And if you're really bored and you really want to waste your time, just go to my YouTube channel, the Tim Wadsworth, and you can watch whatever stupid videos we upload on there as well. I can't promise you your time back. You will feel like you wasted it. But if you're really bored, go ahead and check it out.
All right. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, thanks so much again for joining me today, Tim, and God bless your ministry.
Well, dude, Steve, I know we barely know each other and we're getting to know one another, but it seems that your church is so blessed to have you. Super encouraged by your podcast and how God is using that and your commitment to it and your faithfulness. And Colorado is super blessed to have you, brother.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it. Well, I hope you were encouraged by that podcast as much as I was. I know that I already have notes. I have notes set aside about what he talked about, really making an impact on our leaders and showing them that we know them. We show that we know them and love them, and we help them grow, and helping them to do the same thing for the students that are under them, about how we can really start making an impact and delegating all the work that we do through other people within the ministry and sharing the responsibilities and partnering with other people in our church and in our community. And I've got notes. So I hope you have notes. I hope you're going to have some ideas of ways that you can implement some of the things that Tim talked about today. And make sure you do get in touch with him. If you have questions or further questions about how he implements certain things or what he's learned, or maybe he mentioned something and he didn't really go into depth that you really wanted him to, make sure you reach out to him. I know he would love to hear from you and flesh that out. And make sure you check out his podcast, where he shares a lot more information about what he's doing and what he's learning from his ministry and what God's doing in his ministry there in South Carolina. But we want to just wrap things up by quickly thanking our sponsors again. Again, WorkCamp NE. Make sure you check out their website, especially if you're looking for mission trips for your students. Make sure you check out youthworkers.net for the National Network of Youth Ministries, and Reach Youth New England's website as well. If you're looking to connect with other youth workers, make sure you check them out. If you're not looking to connect with other youth workers, maybe pray about that. Like, just think about it, because it's going to be so important and so crucial for your ministry going forward. I promise you, you will not. You won't be disappointed at all. I mean, there's going to be some connections, of course. You're not going to get along with everybody, sure. But it's important that we connect with other people, and we're going to benefit from doing that for sure. So, thanks to all our sponsors, WorkCamp NE, the National Network of Youth Ministries, and Reach Youth New England. You are what helps make this podcast happen. And the other piece of what makes this podcast happen is you, the listener. Thank you so much for tuning in month after month to listen to these great conversations. And here's what you can do to help us even further is share the podcast out there. Share it with others, and let others know about these awesome conversations, these awesome stories from other youth workers. And also, please leave us a comment. If you like what you hear, leave us a comment, because the more comments we get, it kind of rise to the top a little bit, and other people can helps other people find us. So make sure you do that. That would be so great and so helpful. Also, for those of you that are going to the Orange Conference, I'll be there at the end of this month, so make sure you look me up. You can follow me on Twitter at Steve Cullum. You can also follow the podcast at StuMinPod. That's STUMINPOD on Twitter. And I'd love to meet up with you and maybe even record a conversation. Maybe that'd be an awesome time to have you on the podcast as well, or maybe someone else you know. Maybe you're coming along with a great youth worker, and you're like, we need to meet up, and so I can actually record a conversation with them. I'm going to try to get some other conversations with some workshop leaders and other people on there. So I would love to meet up with you. Just let me know you're going, and we'll see if we can meet up for just even a quick hi, a coffee, or maybe even lunch or something like that. Well, thanks again for tuning in to today's episode, and hopefully you're blessed by Tim Wadsworth's story. And we'll be back next time with another one. But until then, may God bless your ministry.